The jungle isn't silent. That's the first lie. It hums, a constant living thrum of insects, dripping water, and distant, unseen birds. The 7 Viet Cong fighters know this symphony. They move through the green twilight of Phuoc Tuy province not as invaders, but as residents. Their sandals make no sound on the wet earth. They are relaxed. This trail is a commute. The heavy Americans are miles to the north, with their helicopters and their thunder. Here, it is safe. 2 meters away, a man has not blinked in 4 minutes. He is not part of the jungle's noise. He has subtracted himself from it. His body is a contour of mud and leaves. His breath is a shallow tide held behind clenched teeth. His world has shrunk to the space between one eyelash and another, focused on the nearest VC fighter, a young man adjusting a strap on his pack, unaware that the air itself is watching him. The Australian SAS trooper counts them for the 3rd time. 7. He feels, more than sees, the 3 other men of his patrol, frozen in identical tableau. They have been here for 43 hours. For the VC, the jungle is home. For the SAS, it is an instrument, and they have learned to play it in a key of perfect, predatory silence. The VC's intelligence reports had a term for soldiers like these: Phuoc Tuy mem, soft targets. Compared to the American war machine, the Australians seemed passive, defensive, even timid. They didn't sweep in large formations. They didn't chase body counts. The assessment was logical, professional, and catastrophically wrong. What the VC dismissed as caution was not a lack of aggression. It was a different kind of aggression altogether, one measured not in decibels, but in patience, not in volume of fire, but in the unbearable intimacy of the kill. This is the story of a profound and fatal misjudgment. It's the story of how the Viet Cong, masters of jungle warfare, taught themselves to fear the empty spaces, and how a handful of Australians rewrote the rules of engagement from a distance closer than a whisper. The calculus of war. The VC's assessment was born from a decade of brutal experience. They had fought the French, and now they were fighting the Americans. They understood conventional power. The American way was a doctrine of overwhelming force: find, fix, destroy. It was loud, logical, and most importantly, predictable. Helicopters announced an Operation Start. Artillery marked its progress. The priority was the body count, a metric of attrition. To the VC, this was a manageable problem. You could hear the Americans coming. You could choose to melt away or ambush their cumbersome columns. Their strength was also a beacon. Then came the Australians. The initial observations were perplexing. They operated in battalion strength in a single province, a tiny footprint. Their patrols were small, 4 to 6 men, absurdly few. They didn't launch large sweeps. When they made contact, it was brief, and they didn't pursue. To the VC analysts, this painted a clear picture: a professional but politically constrained force, ordered to minimize casualties, a force to be worked around, a Phuoc Tuy mem. They were observing behavior without understanding intent. The Australians weren't fighting a war of attrition. They were fighting a war of perception. The theology of patience. The Australian SAS method was not a tactic, but a theology. Its central tenet was that control was more valuable than contact. While the Americans sought to dominate the enemy, the SAS sought to dominate the environment. Their weapon was not the rifle, but patience. Their battlefield was not terrain, but time. They moved with a slowness that defied military logic. 4 hours to cover 800 meters. Stop. Listen for 20 minutes. Move 50. This was still hunting, a discipline of becoming an inert part of the landscape. They learned to read the jungle's subconscious. A spiderweb broken at knee height meant a man passed within hours. A specific bird's alarm call triangulated an unseen patrol's position. They didn't carry the heavy tools of conventional war. They carried time and the will to spend it. Their goal was not to find the enemy, but to understand him so completely they could predict where he would be tomorrow and be there first, waiting. It was a psychological operation conducted against the enemy's sense of security. The ambush at the fallen log, October 1966. The doctrine found its perfect expression in an anonymous patch of jungle west of Nui Dat. A four-man SAS patrol, callsign Echo, found fresh tracks, 8 VC, moving with the weary confidence of men on a familiar supply run. The textbook response was to track, report, and perhaps ambush. The patrol commander, a sergeant whose name is lost to the records, saw a different calculus. 2 kilometers ahead, the trail squeezed through a natural choke point, a giant fallen tree. He made a gamble of breathtaking audacity. He would not follow the enemy, he would race them. For 90 minutes, Echo Patrol moved parallel to the trail at a pace that stretched their stealth to its limit. They reached the choke point with an hour to spare. They vanished into the foliage, 2 men on one side of the trail, 2 on the other. Then they waited. 80 minutes, 90. Doubt is the mind's natural enemy in such moments. Had the VC turned off? Was this a waste? At 93 minutes, they heard the low murmur of voices. The VC arrived, exhausted, complacent. They bunched up at the fallen log, single file, their world narrowed to the task of navigating the obstacle. The SAS let 6 pass through the kill zone. They waited until the moment of maximum distraction, when the 7th man heaved his pack over the trunk. From a distance of 2 meters, less than the length of a bed, 4 rifles spoke. The engagement lasted less than 5 seconds. 7 VC lay dead. Echo Patrol collected documents, vanished upstream, and was gone before the jungle's echo faded. The after-action report is clinical. It does not mention the 43 prior hours of motionless waiting, nor the gamble. It simply records the result, the birth of the phantoms. The VC intelligence apparatus initially struggled to comprehend such incidents. Their reports describe instantaneous engagements with no warning. Ambush sites showed no brass cartridges, no tracks leading away. It was as if the jungle itself had attacked. The term Muktiao Mem began to vanish from their documents, replaced by a new, chilling lexicon, high-threat reconnaissance, specialized trackers, and finally, the soldiers' term, Marong, jungle phantoms. Captured directives from 1967 revealed the strategic impact. VC units were ordered to assume observation in any area, to avoid all predictable patterns, and to understand that engagement may occur at extremely close range without warning. The SAS, perhaps a few dozen men at any time, had not destroyed the VC in Phuoc Tuy. They had done something more profound. They had destroyed the sanctuary of the jungle itself. Every silent patch of green now held potential terror. A lesson observed. The Americans, the very model of conventional power the VC understood, watched this with growing awe. U.S. advisors attached to Australian units filed confused, then reverent reports. One major, after observing an SAS patrol, wrote, "The Australian method requires patience that exceeds standard infantry training. They achieved in one engagement what would require multiple American operations with higher risk. The fundamental difference is that American forces are optimized for finding and fixing the enemy. Australian SAS are optimized for being unfindable until they choose to be found." It was the ultimate backhanded compliment, an acknowledgement that a different, quieter philosophy could be devastatingly superior in the arena it was designed for. The story of the SAS in Vietnam is not a tale of bigger guns or greater numbers. It is a parable about the power of perception. The Viet Cong lost the battle for Phuoc Tuy not in the fiery clashes they expected, but in the silent green spaces between them. They were defeated by an enemy that understood a timeless truth. In a war of the mind, the most powerful weapon is often the threat you cannot see, the patience you cannot outlast, and the fear that grows in silence.
The Australians were called soft targets because they rejected the noisy calculus of attrition. They proved that true strength lies not in announcing your presence, but in controlling the moment of its revelation. They fought a war not of destruction, but of disorientation, turning the VC's greatest asset, the familiar jungle, into a labyrinth of unseen dread. In the end, the conflict in the green gloom wasn't about who had more men or metal. It was about who could see further into the silence and who had the discipline to wait there. This is the hidden history that rewrites our understanding of conflict, where innovation isn't always a new technology, but an old virtue like patience weaponized, where the quietest approach can break a will more completely than the loudest barrage. If you found this story of hidden ingenuity and psychological warfare compelling, then do us a favor, like this video to help others find it. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the untold strategies and secret histories that shaped our world. And share this with someone who understands that the most profound lessons often come from the stories nobody saw coming. Tell us in the comments, in an age of constant noise, what power do you think silence still holds? Because sometimes the most important truths are the ones spoken just 2 meters away.